doing on this. So we move on to item 9, which is our indoor court facility, Upper Harbour, and I'd like to invite Lisa White to join us at the table. Excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors, for your time on what is definitely looking like a very busy day. So apologies from Margaret, who's visiting family in Scotland, and can I acknowledge Board Member John McLean, who's here in support. Once again, I'm before you seeking support for a project that I passionately believe will serve not only my community, but that of a much wider sub-region. Our Ollie is the only project for Upper Harbour in the 10-year plan. It has a strong economic benefit and a good payback period, better than others that are recommended to proceed. If I fail to get your support today, my community and many residents in yours will have nothing extra of note for 10 years, not even a business case. To put that in perspective, a new entrant starting school won't see any new indoor sports facilities till they're halfway through high school. A Year 7 at intermediate won't have access to a new indoor sports facility till they're halfway through their degree. The participation habits that provide health, well-being and community connection benefits will have been lost, unless they happen to be athletic and talented or come from a wealthy family who have the time and money to support their interests in indoor sport. The opportunity cost of failing to proceed with this project is met by those we don't currently count, and we're certainly not serving, the ones not currently able to play, the people at the heart of the sport investment plan that you just endorsed at item 8. The ones who might like to have a go at volleyball or basketball or futsal, if only a social league was available, or our ethnic communities who like to arrange informal leagues within their social groups. Without a new facility to host the competition games, the capacity at every school hall and gym is being taken up by competition sport. There are already no school halls or gyms available for term 2 and 3 on the North Shore and in the wider North Harbour community next year. Massey University and AUT are at capacity, and AUT is the most expensive facility to hire in Auckland. Thank you for allowing our Sports Code representatives to speak to you about need. They live the infrastructure deficit every single day, and they have done for many years, and their message is clear. We need this facility now, and even then it will not meet the growing demands of our increasingly diverse population. This is not an anecdotal claim. It is strongly supported by several of Council's own strategic priorities documents, active research and the national sporting bodies' facility plans, including the Auckland Regional Indoor Court Facility project that was approved last week that Jude from Active mentioned. I've provided some slides for you on this evidence that's available, but I don't intend to read through it now due to the time constraint. But please, remember that sport is organised and played sub-regionally. Our Ollie affects your communities. Council credibility is at stake here when you're being asked to shelve a project for indoor court provision due to a lack of need and low projected growth in the northwest. The conflict between the policy department theoretical worldview and that of other council operation departments, local boards and our community grows more marked with every report. A theme you've heard already raised about Chamberlain Park and Manurewa's Ollie, which you'll hear from later. I have a few slides I'd like to share that will allow you the reasonable doubt as to the quality of the advice that you've been given, that I hope will allow you to support our request for this project to proceed to a detailed business case. I'm not asking for funding. The report in paragraph 73 to 75 tells you that that's in place. This project is being asked to be shelved due to lack of need, not funding. The need exists, and a detailed business case process will identify the best location, appropriate sizing, and any partnership model options or opportunities. So I'll just quickly flick through these slides and you'll get some idea of what I'm on about. What we're asking you to do is to progress to detailed business case. The what, why and where, this is our One Local initiative. We're looking for a sub-regional forecourt facility, and you've heard why. We need it yesterday. The problem with the advice that's in the report is it has focused around the land that's available at Brigham Creek Road, which we identified as an opportunity to help reduce the overall cost and risks around the project, but instead it narrowed the focus to the point where the advice does not cater to the needs of the Upper Harbour Local Board. Sorry, that's what I was just talking about. Oh, God. Up until March, the advice that we had was that the needs assessment had been completed and there was strong evidence to proceed. Then in June, we're told the needs don't exist. We've been told that there's low projected population growth in the northwest, which is frankly ludicrous. And if you look at your REMU statistics, you will see Upper Harbour is the highest in percentage terms. We're also the highest in absolute terms. The report does tell you that our population makeup is projected to be more young people and more Asian people who we know are more active in indoor sports. In our report, it says that the Massey Leisure Centre will be able to accommodate the need. In the Rodney Ollie report later, you'll be told that the Massey facility can't cope with the population growth and need. Using the Community Facilities Network Plan, the indication is that one leisure facility is 18,000 people, 2 indoor courts, therefore 9,000 per court at rough maths. We went through the report and we worked out the maths. It doesn't work. It's inconsistent with our own policies and our advice. The indicative business case suggests that for those new entrants, until they're in the middle of high school, they won't need any new indoor courts, and that's just for the business case, not for the actual courts. When we redid the maths, your worst case scenario is that we think 3 years ago we needed 5, by 2026 we'll need 9, and by 2036 we'd need 11. The policy recommendation suggested 1, 2 and 2.6. There's clearly a great disconnect between the way these figures are being calculated. The details of that basically lead me to ask you to conclude that this is not based on robust quality advice. It's inconsistent, it's incomplete information, and it's too narrow a focus. It's not what we asked for, it's what we've been given. It does not meet our needs. There's a whole raft of other documents which support our position. You've heard from the sporting codes themselves, and what we are actually asking you to do today is not to shelve it. We're asking that you carry on and progress this to the detailed business case that has been funded as part of the long-term plan funding, and that we ask you to consider that a decision that impacts on such a strategically important network priority be made with quality advice. So I'll leave you with what we would like your recommendation to be today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. This is something our local board feels really strongly about, and I wouldn't normally come here and criticise the advice of officers. That really, it actually feels quite uncomfortable, but in this instance I feel I have no choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa and John. I'm sure, now I've got a big speaking order. I just want to make sure councillors and members, if we can just stick to questions, because we're then going to go straight into the item. So I just ask for a little bit of thoughtfulness. Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Lisa. I completely agree with you. Are you fine with so there's an either or, there's 2 options there. There's the or, which I will be hopefully supporting if it's, which is about the forecourt indoor, because I kind of had felt like we'd already supported it through the Ollie process. So is that exactly what you'd want there, or you want something broader than?
Well, we actually would propose that you take out the 2 specific address information, because we feel that's where the address of the available land has actually skewed the information that's been provided. So by removing the Whenuapai, Hobsonville, Westgate specifics, the detailed business case can bring you quality advice which is far more objective, and otherwise that seeks to exclude the people from the North Shore, who we know damn well will travel to an Ollie if we build it in Brigham Creek.
Okay, so
So it's sort of a modified.
if it's more the northwest as opposed to...
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's because sports played sub-regionally, so we believe that the service catchment is much, much wider than just the northwest.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Clow.
Lisa, I've already given notice to move the second of the options in C, which is for the Ollie, but I just have a question, because I must admit I find this report a little bit confusing and all over the place. I don't mean to be mean, but I'm struggling with it. Your local board, you had to change, I thought there was a slight change of direction recently to say you did want 2 courts and not the Ollie one. Could you just clarify that first?
Our board's considered lots of options, including we're quite desperate for the funding for our outdoor sports fields as well, but this is the project that was consulted on in the long-term plan, and we don't normally get a great deal of input in Upper Harbour. Our community's not particularly vocal, but they have been on this. And a 2-court facility or a 4-court facility, what the need justifies will come out during the detailed business case process, and we don't believe in any way that our Ollie progressing to detailed business case would undermine, for example, the Rodney one. We think it would complement it. So we've looked around, how can we best serve the most amount of people for the least cost to ratepayers? We have looked to see how much we can do, but we genuinely believe that the 4-court facility is needed, and in fact, if we built a 10-court facility, it would get used.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just turning to the recommendations that we've got before us, and I'd invite your comment, but I'll go through them. I'd make the assumption that you're suggesting that, 1, we don't agree with the findings because the findings on your evidence are clearly incorrect. Secondly, that we also vote down that the development of a 4-court indoor facility has a weak case, because in point of fact, based on your evidence, it may well have a very strong case. And then if I turn to the option, quite obviously we're considering under 2 a 4-court indoor court option, but should we just leave it open and go for a multi-sport indoor court facility, because it may well be that the business case indicates that more than 4 courts are required, for example. So my question around that is, why should we be predetermining a position when, 1, evidence appears to be incorrect, 2, there may well be a very strong business case, and thirdly, I'd make the comment that I'm making the assumption, and you might well agree with this, that there could be substantial development contribution funding arising from certainly the catchment around Whenuapai and Hobsonville, and quite obviously elsewhere, because of the huge growth in the area.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Yes, the 4-court is what our Ollie was, and it was what we consulted on during the long-term plan, but I believe that the detailed business case is the opportunity for increased need or reduced scope to actually be fully investigated, along with any potential partnership opportunities or other funding streams. So in terms of our option for 4 courts, the net benefits of that was 50 million. The reduced scope option of 2 was only 32.9 million, both still significantly higher than other projects that are progressing. And our payback period for our option is 9 years, which for a council project is actually not too bad. So in our view, the problem has arisen because of the narrow focusing in on the indicative business case that was too close in a geographic proximity, and too much reliance has been put on the population figures and not enough on the wider factor in the way sports played.
And through you, Madam Chair, I find it very disturbing that in a number of reports, our committee is being expected to endorse findings that any number of local boards and people in the community are pointing out to us are severely deficient. That is, I find, very disturbing.
this is going to come up, I think, consistently with all of these. So I just want to put a little bit of context around this, members. We ask our staff for fair and fearless and tough advice. And I think we need to respect that. As governors, it's then our choice what we do with that. But I think we need to have absolutely clear strategic advice from our staff that is given and respected. We then hear from our local boards who are contesting that advice, and then it's our decision how we choose to move forward from there. But we've got a long afternoon of these Ollie reports. I want us to do it in a way that is respectful and sensible, because going back to Councillor Simpson's point, as Deputy Chair of Finance, we need to be able to explain to the ratepayers why we spend money, where we spend it, and what the value is that we get for that money. And without that rigorous advice that sets out how these address policy, we can't answer those questions. But we have every right as elected members to then vary our decisions accordingly. Last two questions or comments from Councillor Simpson, or questions from Simpson and Newman, and then we'll go to the agenda item.
Lisa, thank you very much. I can understand where you're coming from completely. Look, my question to you is, as Chair of the Quality Advice, and noting that actually we have had the highest score that we've ever had in the history of Auckland Council with regards to quality advice, and you're saying the quality advice in this case potentially isn't very good. So my question is, what would you suggest, how would you suggest the template be changed to actually reflect better quality advice for this particular item? Because that's something we look at.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that, and I'll just say, if you don't know that answer right now, could you come to the next quality advice meeting as the local board rep and input into that? Because issue aside, I think we just need to do everything that we can to improve the quality of the material that comes to us for decision making. Thank you.
And I'm just going to jump in. Great discussion, good idea, discuss, but not now. Councillor Newman.
Can I just make one comment, Madam Chair? The issue is here, we're only hearing a narrow focus from policy. You haven't actually had the fearless advice from the operations team, which wouldn't support the policy conclusion.
That's why we're taking time to take the local boards prior to each agenda item, and your issues are taken well on board. Councillor Newman, last question.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning. And I just want to foreshadow that I have discussed with the Chair. In my view, rather than agreeing these indicative findings for all these Ollies, we just need to note them to take, I think, some of the little bit of the heat out of this. But with respect to the indicative findings, can I just understand, because it's happened at the Manireva Ollie too, whether your indicative business case has been driven by Martin Jenkins or another consultation, agency, consultancy that's actually provided this information, or has it been driven by officers only? I mean, what has underpinned this? Has it been a Martin Jenkins report?
Okay, thank you. Good questions and great answers. Who would like to move? Councillors? Councillor Newman, would you like to move that we acknowledge? Okay. Well, Councillor Walker and Watson have moved quite a lot, but you're welcome to... No, Councillor Walker and Watson, you can do it. It is. Okay, Councillor Watson and Walker will move in second. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So let's move straight into the item, and I think it's Nancy and Kat. Again, all welcome, team.
Madam Chair, I'd like it noted that I would like to move, as I've given you a note, I would like to move that now. With the C2, so to speak. Put up.
Okay. And I've just got some changes that I was just going to recommend from the chair, that we just note the findings. So I will change that from the chair. I think that just picks up the issues that have been raised, and we've just made a change to B, noting the report presented, and I think that just allows us to acknowledge the information and then to make our changes as needed. So sorry, Councillor Clow, you are moving the second part, so you're moving the or. Okay, cool. So that's moved and seconded. We'll just hold that for a moment and hand over to Kat and Nancy.
So I have a short introduction. This paper seeks approval of the indicative business case findings for the Upper Harbour Ole to build a forecourt destination facility. The indicative business case includes a needs assessment, a strategic case, and an economic case. The needs assessment shows low population in the area in the short to medium term for a destination facility. This is mainly due to the large population required for a destination facility, and also the existing Massey Leisure Centre that serves 56% of the population in the area. The strategic and economic case show good alignment with council strategies, co-plans, and positive community benefits. We have also considered the option of building a smaller two-court facility. This option performs best against assessment criteria, including growth and future community need, strategic fit, and value for money. So based on the findings, we recommend either approve the development of a detailed business case for a local two-court facility when the population reaches 98,000, which is likely to be 2026, or approve the development of a detailed business case for a destination forecourt facility commencing in 2019-20. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Coe, did you wish to speak to the moving of the recommendation?
One question first. So what is best practice for within this area? Is it best practice we develop multi-sport use sports hubs? Is that where we're coming from? Isn't that what we're trying to do? Rather than local, suboptimal, you could almost say, and things that, you know, so what is best practice? And I'm reading from a report that says this option responds to a regional shortfall and is aligned with best practice, which is to develop multi-use sports hubs.
Okay, through the chair. So the request was to assess the Upper Harbour Ole, which is the multi-sport facility, and that's what we assess on. In terms of the best practice, we tend to use council plans and strategies such as the sport investment plan, which is discussed, and the community network, community facility network plan.
Okay, I'm not sure whether that's an answer, but that's right.
Just through the chair, just to clarify, each thing can be assessed differently. So sometimes when you look at the community facilities network plan, there are a range of provisions in there. For example, in the pool recommended in the Faux area, you'll see that the leisure is being associated with the aquatic. Sometimes where we can, we put libraries, aquatic, leisure together. That's what multi-purpose often most means. It depends on the circumstances. If you remember back to October in the Northwest, where actually this issue, both for Rodney and Upper Harbour, were discussed as part of the Northwest provision. There were a range of things considered in that wider provision assessment, but it just depends. So the one local initiative was for forecourt destination facility. It's 4 indoor courts. And indoor courts can be used for a range of different sports.
Any questions or comments, given the recommendation that's now hopefully up there? Councillor Walker.
You've heard the presentation from Active, Harbour Sport, also the local board, and the evidence that they're basing their findings on, and those findings emphasise a requirement urgently for a significant complex, conceivably 4 courts or more. Now that you've heard that, do you think that there's a case for having a business case that looks at the wider parameters?
I suppose when we look at this, it was for a certain geographic area. That geographic area had been looked at not long before. Lots of the information this case is based on is also based on the information from that Northwest investigation. We know that there is a lot of demand from sports codes, but actually council also has its own provision guidelines about when it will provide. And so mostly we listen to sports codes, we have a look at what their provision guidelines are, and then we look at the council adopted ones. So the Community Facilities Network Plan does have provision guidelines for indoor courts as part of the leisure component. So it is a mixture, but council does have its own provision guidelines that it has adopted, and we apply those.
I've got Councillor Lee next.
I'm just puzzled by the statement. The needs assessment found low projected population growth in the northwest in the short to medium term. I understood there is a significant surge in population and development in that particular sector. Could you explain that, please?
Yeah, so through the chair, so it is correct that the area is experiencing high growth in the future. We say there's low population because for a destination facility we need quite a large population, and also that the existing Massey Leisure Centre serves 56% of the population already.
Oh, no, it's just a quick comment, and thank you for what was, I guess, in the report too. Was it another option? I think I've heard Lisa White talk about this for many, many years, probably a couple hundred times, but I think that it's important that we somehow, when we do this, include not just those suburbs, because we know that North Harbour, Event Finder Stadium in North Shore, the event centre there is at capacity. This will be used by North Shore residents, this will be used by Rodney residents, this will be used by the Northwest because of the growth in indoor court sport use. There's a moving away from field use and into indoor court. So I think this, although it's great for the growing Northwest, it's actually much wider than that, and I think it's important that we push forward on this one, as we've supported all the local boards and their ollies so far. So to me, I kind of felt like the decision was made. It's good to have all this advice, but I just hope that when we look at it, it will be wider than just the Northwest, because there is an increased amount of use coming from everywhere. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do think what's really important here is good faith with the OLLI process. We asked each local board to tell us what was important to their community, and I do think that this is going ahead with a business case, and as Deputy Chair White said, the business case might say something different, I don't know, but we've got to go ahead and do it. We've got to see whether it works. And if you look at that northern part of the Henderson Massey local board area, that's Red Hills, and that's live zone. Houses are going up just daily, new houses. And if you look at also Scott Point, that has a high Asian population if you go riding around there and having a look. And as we know, people from Asia often, as we said in evidence there, play more indoor sports. So you will have a sudden influx of people needing those sorts of facilities for sports. And I think it's really critical. And it also backs up our sport participation plan, which we've just adopted. So for me, this is really important to do. That northwest part doesn't have a lot of facilities in terms of indoor sports. Massey at the moment has a really tiny little car park, pathetic public transport. And so you won't get people going there even if they can get a court. They can't get a court at the moment. So it's not going to fulfil the needs. I'm sure that if people could actually park there or get some decent public transport there'd be more people using it. But as it is, it's filling up. And YMCA seem to have a push for using up more and more of that space for their own part of their business, which doesn't help. And you can't redevelop the old library that's adjoining that because the ceiling height's too low. So I think we've got to do something for this northwestern area. Just makes sense, and it's not going to be built tomorrow, but we need to have a business case to actually base our future decisions on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. So I've got Watson, Philippina and Brown. Seems to me everyone's speaking in support. If there is anyone who wants to speak again.
Questions
We're
still
on
or not?
questions and comments, so. Okay, so we've got Councillor Watson, you're next.
Thanks, and that's just speaking. And just at the outset, I'd like to certainly thank the Upper Harbour Local Board for the thoroughness with which they have approached this matter in terms of the study area, the needs assessment, the growth statements, the gap analysis, the relationship to other centres and indeed other OLLIs. It's been very helpful, as has been the input from Harbour Sport and Active, which has essentially reinforced what the local board have known all along. So I think that's been very beneficial. I also would like to thank Councillor Clow for moving these matters, but I just would like to ask him for one suggestion that might improve the clarity here in my speaking term, and that is basically in C to put the full stop at the end of option 2. Otherwise, if we continue with that other clause to primarily serve Whenuapai, Hobsonville and Westgate, we're basically duplicating the mistake we've already made and just concentrating in that area, where everything I'm hearing from people is to broaden it out, to make this business case one that looks at all options, that's thorough, and that takes a wider view. So with your forbearance, Councillor Clow, I would just suggest that that's going to actually help do what everyone else has signalled is desirable in this matter.
Just to clarify, but you want to leave northwestern, don't you?
I guess if we're understanding the north, to be the true north, that's Albany as well. I'm assuming that's your intention, Councillor Clow?
Well, to be quite honest, northwest to me also is Albany all the way through to Rodney, because I do see the Rodney local court situation as part of this package, this whole thing, and I know it's separate, but it's kind of it's a big area.
So I think we're saying the same thing. The northwest area is that big area that covers the sentiments that were expressed in terms of not restricting ourselves, but doing a thorough, detailed business case that looks across the board and comes up with the best solution for that wider area.
That's what
that makes sense.
I'm happy with it.
Okay, thank
Chair
you.
can adjust it.
That's the intention? Okay. Councillor Philippina.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question first, and this is just based on the conversation we've just had or heard. So with the Rodney Ollie, what then happens to that as a result of the forecourt indoor court facility? Because would we then have an over provision in the northwest area and could affect the Rodney Ollie?
The Rodney Ollie, like the Upper Hutt Ollie, is what they have put forward. We have done the assessment for Rodney. Our recommendations and the Rodney local boards line up. And so, from our point of view, they have a case. There could be, some overlap between the catchment of users for a forecourt for the Upper Harbour One Local Initiative and the 2 court for the Rodney Initiative, but I don't think it's enormous. And as population grows, I think that overlap would reduce somewhat, but there would be an overlap.
in supplementary chair question. So with C, could a business plan or business case detailed incorporate either a 2 or 4 court? I know we had some recommendations on there, but I just don't want anything to affect the Rodney, Ollie, and I know it has to go through a process, but could a detailed business case be for a 2 and or a 4?
Just to also clarify with the changes, it is also affects the Henderson Massey local board area. So we are working with them on their aquatic case, which potentially looks at 2 courts around that as well. So you've almost broadened the one local initiative back out to the assessment you already received in October. So you just need to be a little bit careful that we're not now repeating something we have previously done and you made previous resolutions on. So the C reflected the one local initiative. So if you, so if you start fiddling with that, it starts to affect other one local initiatives that we're doing.
The point's well made, and I think, Councillor Watson, in good faith, was trying to say, let's make sure that we are wrapping our arms around the high growth area and service the area that is logically served by this OLI. However, if we've now broadened it out so widely that the case starts to crumble, that doesn't necessarily feel the wisest to me. So would you like to move your full stop back, Councillor? Why don't we just take, I'll take Member Brown while people work out where they want the full stop to go, because it's a multi-million-dollar full stop.
And
Member
Chair,
Brown,
can I just reserve my right to speak as well, please?
Okay, I am trying to move it on, Councillor, so we're doing questions and comments at the same time.
I thought we were. Oh, sorry.
Why don't I go? Member Brown, we'll check the full stop and we'll go back to you, Councillor Filipaina. Member Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the officials and the local board and boards that are present around the matters that are important to them and their communities. I just want to tender an observation, if I may, insofar as the conversation at hand and also relevant to the earlier things around sport investment. So the reports, and in fact all of them, omit long term. So the reports are clear on short and intermediate term, but none of them have a lens around long term. So regardless of how many courts, I would have thought the driving factor was what is best for the whole city long term. An observation I'll make around using events that can actually tip us over with no budget or plan. And I'll recall the 1990 Commonwealth Games where the velodrome was built in Manukau. Now no longer used as a cycling track and actually is the heart of our high school kapahaka and Pacifica competitions, right? So in that period, it was short-term, short-sighted, but unbelievably Māori and Pacifica became an immediate benefactor because we're the only communities that it seems have a use for it. Now, in the study part, I can't see why you'd want to constrain any parameter around what intermediate and long-term is, i.e., if you build one court, it's probably overwhelmed in a short period of time. You build 2 courts, it might take a bit longer, but inevitably will be overwhelmed. So I'm keen, notwithstanding the conflict of alignments of council policy and the local board priorities, that the officials are encouraged and supported by chucking the dinghy as far away from the wharf as they can for nothing other than to keep us on notice when we use these following terms. It's for the kids. It's multi-generational. Actually, all I've heard in the last few hours is how selfish we are as adults today, because it's all about here and now. So that's my observation. Kia ora.
Let's just check and see where we've got to. Councillor Cooper?
I just had a quick question that something occurred to me in the report because we've got Rodney's 2 courts coming up, and I just want to make sure in this assessment that doesn't undermine their business case, because I think there's enough growth in, because we're looking at changing all these words, because I would also say it would be green height as well, people would come over, that we don't stretch right up to Rodney, because then, that'd just, we don't want to be having each local board's Ollie undermining one another when it's stretching too far. So that's just my caution.
And that's why I was saying it's so critical that we work out where the full stop goes. So Councillor Clove, you and Councillor Watson negotiated on that? What have you come up with?
I think we've decided that before destination, we put sub-regional. So it's a sub-regional destination, and then take out Whenupi Hobsonville, and it's the wider Upper Harbour local board area, and I think the addition of sub-regional is very important. So remember that the Rodney one is a local indoor court facility, and the Upper Harbour has always been advocated by the Upper Harbour Board to be sub-regional, so I'm prepared to speak to it whenever it's appropriate.
Okay, I haven't got any other speakers on the list, so I'll go to Councillor Filipaina, who asked for his opportunity to speak. Okay, and then I'll go to Councillor Walker, and then Clow, and then we'll put the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I want to acknowledge our staff because I know that that with any of the indicative business cases, what you end up doing, and this is outlined in number 19 and headed indicative business cases are a tool to support decision making, and there's also the case model developed by the Treasury, and then it outlines under number 20 the bullet points. So Katarana, to you and your team, thank you, because without these business cases I guarantee we wouldn't have the debate that we're having now. So I just want to acknowledge that. I would have preferred the 2 court and possibly 4, but in regards to the changes, I will be supporting recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. We did toy with having item number 19 before the Ollies, but time is against us. Councillor Walker.
I just want to give notice that I'll be voting against A and B. I'm not comfortable even with noting information that the local board has faintly pointed out is significantly deficient. So I just want to put that on the table. But if you are going to note some things, then why not note the findings of the Upper Harbour Local Board and their conclusions, so that that is at least incorporated, and it would at least give some balance, and the mover might consider that.
We've accepted the presentation and thanked our chairs, so it forms part of our record.
We haven't noted, though. If noted, it has some significance.
Yep, thank you. I must admit I do find B a bit confusing myself, but you can only wordsmith things so much. Nancy and Katarina, thank you very much, and I know perhaps it's not the recommendation you perhaps might have wanted, but I think this may end up with an outcome that is better long term. I want to take my hat off to the Upper Harbour Local Board, because there were 2 local boards when we did the Ollie program, and Councillor Simpson and myself went back to 2 of them. One was Otara Papatauetui, who were just quite happy to accept having relief at Collindale Park for $360,000 a year or something, and we said, well, that will happen anyway. You're sure you don't want something else? But they were adamant and very selfless about it. And then the Upper Harbour Local Board, and I would take my hat off to them at the same time, because they came back and they really took the long-term view, and they said, no, we don't want to rush into this. We don't want something that's necessarily local. We want a decent facility that's going to serve in a sub-regional area which is including the Henderson Massey and, not Rodney, but verging in, but I noticed in the original report it does refer to a bit of overlap with Rodney. And they said, no, we know this will take longer to deliver, probably, as compared to, say, a couple of courts, but they said, no, we think this is the best thing to do for our Upper Harbour Norwest area. So I'll take my hat off to them, and they've stuck with that, and they're coming back. So I'd urge everyone to vote for this. I think it's the best outcome. If the business case says it should be just 2 courts, well, so be it, but I'm struggling to believe that will be the case. It won't mean we're going to build it straight away. It might mean we're going to build it a little bit later, but I think we're going to get the optimal delivery of the project by doing this. So I just urge you to vote for it, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clow. Right, it's been moved, seconded. Councillor Clow's closed the debate. I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And you want on A. A and B, Councillor Walker? Okay, cool, we can do that. Anyone else against? That's great, that's carried. Thank